She lived in a small, crowded neighborhood where everyone knew each other's business. From the outside, it looked like a lively place, full of children playing in narrow streets and neighbors chatting over fences. But for her, it was a place of constant struggle. She was quiet, often lost in her thoughts and never quite fit in with the other children. At school, she tried to participate in games and group activities, but she was always the last one chosen, the one others laughed at for not being fast enough, strong enough, or clever enough. Each day, the whispers followed her, the snickers behind her back and the pointed jokes that made her feel invisible and small. Her family was loving, but they didn't always understand the depth of her pain. Her parents encouraged her to make friends, to join clubs, to be more outgoing, but that only made her feel more isolated when her efforts failed. She longed for acceptance, to be seen for who she was rather than what others thought she should be. It was a heavy burden for someone so young, and it weighed on her heart every day. Despite the challenges, she had a passion that nobody knew about. It was something she discovered on her own, something that brought her peace when the world felt unkind. Late at night, when the house was quiet and her family had gone to bed, she would sit in her small room, her hands moving carefully over her work. It could be music, painting, writing, or a craft, something that allowed her to escape from the cruel words and mocking laughter of others. In that private space, she felt alive, capable, and free. She dreamed of one day sharing it with the world, but fear held her back. Fear of ridicule, fear of rejection, fear of once again becoming the target of cruel jokes. School days were the hardest. Every morning she walked the narrow streets with her head down, bracing herself for the teasing that awaited. Some days were worse than others. She remembered one particular incident clearly. It was during a group activity in class, and she had been chosen to present her idea. Her hands shook, her voice trembled, and the moment she spoke, a few students laughed openly. Others whispered and pointed, and she felt her cheeks burn with shame. She wanted to vanish, to disappear into the floor, but she had no place to hide. That day she learned to swallow her feelings and smile. Even when inside, she felt broken. The teasing wasn't limited to school. In her neighborhood, children and even adults sometimes made fun of her. Whether it was the way she dressed, the way she walked, or the quiet way she spoke, someone always had a comment. She tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself it didn't matter, but every word stuck like tiny thorns that dug deeper into her confidence. She wondered if she would ever be accepted, if she would ever find a place where she belonged. But even in the darkest moments, she found small sparks of hope. Sometimes, a teacher would notice her efforts, praising her quietly, giving her a word of encouragement when no one else was looking. Occasionally, a neighbor would smile at her as she passed by, acknowledging her presence. These moments were fleeting, but they were enough to remind her that not everyone was cruel, that maybe, just maybe, she had something special within her. At home, she spent hours exploring her passion. Each stroke of a brush, each note played, each word written, brought her closer to herself. She kept her work hidden from everyone, fearing judgment, but the act of creating gave her a sense of purpose. She began to understand that her worth was not determined by the laughter of others. Slowly, she nurtured a quiet strength within her, a determination to continue despite the odds. She told herself that one day, she would show the world, and when that day came, the voices that mocked her would no longer matter. There were nights when she cried herself to sleep, exhausted from the weight of the world. But there were also nights when she felt unstoppable, when her imagination soared and she imagined herself standing in front of a crowd, sharing her passion and being celebrated for it. She clung to those visions, letting them fuel her persistence. She knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time she believed in the possibility of success. Her classmates continued their teasing, unaware of the fire growing within her. One day they placed a prank in her locker, mocking her again. She opened it, expecting to find humiliation, but instead of breaking down, she felt a strange sense of clarity. She realized that the opinions of others were just noise, distractions that could not define her. From that moment, she decided to focus on what mattered most: her own growth, her own passion, and her own happiness. Even though she kept her work hidden, she began experimenting with new ideas, pushing herself beyond what she thought was possible. She stayed up late into the night, not noticing the hours pass, lost in the joy of creation. Her hands, once shaky and uncertain, moved with confidence. Her mind, once clouded with doubt, became a place of clarity and innovation. She began to see progress in ways she never had before, small victories that reminded her of her potential. At school, she started noticing small changes within herself. She walked taller, spoke with a bit more confidence, and smiled more often. She didn't yet have the courage to confront the bullies or to showcase her talent publicly, but there was a quiet resilience in her demeanor. People began to notice a difference, though not always in ways she expected. Some were still dismissive, some still laughed, but others watched with curiosity, sensing that there was something remarkable about her, even if they couldn't yet understand it. She also began keeping a journal, documenting her thoughts, her struggles, and her small achievements. It became a sacred space, a place where she could be completely honest without fear of judgment. Writing helped her process her emotions, understand her journey, and plan for the future. She discovered that even the smallest steps forward were worth celebrating, and that each setback was an opportunity to learn and grow. Her family noticed subtle changes too. They saw her dedication, her perseverance, and the joy she found in her private world. Though they didn't fully understand the depth of her talent yet, they offered support in quiet ways. Extra time to work, encouragement to keep going, and a listening ear when she needed to vent. Their belief in her, though understated, became an anchor in her life. One afternoon, while walking home from school, she saw a group of children teasing another girl in the neighborhood. Something stirred inside her, a mix of empathy, anger, and recognition. She remembered how it felt to be mocked and ridiculed, and she couldn't stand by and watch it happen again. Tentatively, she intervened, using her voice for the first time to speak up. The children were surprised, and the girl being teased looked relieved. Though it was a small act, it marked a turning point. She realized that her experiences, painful as they were, could give her strength and courage to act, even when it was difficult. From that day, she approached her daily life with a new mindset. She understood that the world could be cruel, but it could also be beautiful. She realized that her passion was not just an escape, it was a tool for transformation. It could empower her. It could inspire others, and it could become the bridge between the person she was and the person she wanted to become. Evenings became her sanctuary. She poured herself into her work with a sense of purpose and joy that no one could take away. Her confidence grew quietly, imperceptibly at first, like a seed pushing through the soil toward the sun. She still faced moments of doubt, still heard the echoes of ridicule from the past, but they no longer controlled her. She had found a rhythm, a balance between perseverance and self-care, between hope and reality. Though the journey was just beginning, she felt a sense of anticipation, a sense that something extraordinary was waiting for her. The mockery of others, the doubts and the fears were no longer chains, they were stepping stones. Every challenge, every insult, every lonely night had prepared her for the path ahead. She began to believe in herself in a way she never had before, and that belief became a powerful force, propelling her toward a future that was entirely her own. And so, in a small room in a crowded neighborhood, a quiet girl nurtured a dream. She faced the world every day, carrying the weight of mockery and doubt, but inside she held a spark that no one could extinguish. Little did she know that the very people who laughed at her now, the people who doubted her, would one day witness something they never imagined, a miracle born from resilience, talent, and unwavering determination. Her story had begun, and though the road ahead was uncertain, she walked it with courage, patience, and the quiet knowledge that she was capable of greatness. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, yet she continued to dedicate herself to her passion. Each day brought a new challenge, but instead of feeling defeated, she started to see them as opportunities to learn. She experimented more boldly, testing new ideas and pushing herself beyond the limits she once thought were insurmountable. Late nights in her room became adventures, a place where mistakes were not failures but lessons. Every small success, every tiny improvement, gave her a sense of accomplishment and kept her moving forward. At school, she tried to stay invisible at first, avoiding the teasing and mockery, but something inside her was changing. She began to notice how she responded differently to people who had once hurt her. Instead of shrinking away, she started to stand a little taller, speak a little louder, and smile a little more. She wasn't seeking approval yet, but she was beginning to feel a sense of power over her own life. The ridicule still stung, but it no longer had the same control over her emotions. She discovered that the real strength came from within. Her parents noticed the changes too. They saw her spending hours at her desk, not out of defiance but out of determination. They heard her quietly humming to herself, or catching her in the act of sketching, writing, or playing an instrument with intense focus. Though they couldn't always understand the depth of her commitment, they offered their support in the quietest ways, bringing her favorite snacks, giving her extra time, and simply showing interest without pressuring her. Their encouragement was subtle, but it made a huge difference. She felt loved, not just for what she could do, but for who she was. Despite the growth, there were setbacks. She faced moments when nothing seemed to go right. A drawing would not turn out as imagined. A song would feel flat. A story would lose its meaning. She wanted to quit at times, to throw everything away and give up on the dream that sometimes felt so far away. But she remembered the nights she had spent alone, creating in silence, and she reminded herself that perseverance was part of the journey. She kept pushing even when her energy ran low and her confidence wavered. She understood that true progress was not linear, and each stumble was only a step closer to improvement. Then came a small but meaningful opportunity. The school announced a talent showcase, and though her heart raced with fear and doubt, she decided to participate. She wasn't doing it to impress others or seek validation, but because it felt like the right time to share a piece of herself with the world. She worked tirelessly, rehearsing and refining her performance each day, battling anxiety and the memory of past mockery. The fear was still there, but now it was accompanied by excitement and anticipation. When the day of the showcase arrived, she felt a mix of nervousness and determination. Backstage, she watched the other students perform, some with ease, others with visible tension. She reminded herself of the hours she had spent preparing, the nights she had poured into perfecting her work. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind inside her. She knew that once she stepped forward, there would be no turning back. It was her moment, and she was ready to embrace it fully. Her performance was quiet at first, subtle, but it gradually drew attention. As she poured herself into her art, the audience noticed the passion and skill behind every movement, every note, every word. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen, by people outside her small circle of family. When she finished, there was a pause, followed by soft applause that slowly grew louder. Some faces in the crowd were familiar, students who had mocked her before, but now their expressions were mixed with surprise and awe. She realized that her hard work had spoken louder than any words of ridicule ever could. After the showcase, she received her first real recognition. A teacher approached her, praising her creativity and dedication. Other students whispered compliments, and a few even asked for advice, curious about how she had developed such talent. It was a strange feeling, this mixture of validation and disbelief. She had spent so long hiding her skills, and now they were being acknowledged in a way that felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. But she kept her humility, knowing that this was only the beginning, not the end. Encouraged by this experience, she began to take small steps toward sharing her work more openly. She submitted pieces to school competitions, volunteered for local events, and even helped younger children learn some of her skills. Each time she shared, she grew stronger, more confident, and more resilient. The teasing and ridicule didn't disappear entirely, but it mattered less and less. She understood that her worth was not measured by the opinions of those who chose to mock her, but by her own growth and the joy she found in her passion. Her family continued to support her, sometimes in subtle, surprising ways. Her parents surprised her with materials for her projects, offering suggestions without pushing too hard. Her siblings, once indifferent, began to watch her with curiosity and admiration. She began to notice the ripple effect of her dedication, the way it inspired those around her, even in small, quiet ways. The neighborhood children who had once ignored her began to watch with interest, and some even joined her in creative activities. She saw firsthand how perseverance could influence not only her own life, but also the lives of others. She also started learning to manage setbacks differently. When her work didn't turn out as expected, she approached it with curiosity instead of frustration. Each mistake became an experiment, each failure a lesson. She began to understand that progress was built on persistence, patience, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. She noticed that the more she focused on growth rather than perfection, the more joy she found in her work, and the more her talents flourished. The changes within her were mirrored by small changes in the way others perceived her. Some classmates began to treat her with respect, recognizing her talent and dedication. A few still mocked her, but their words no longer held the same power over her. She had learned to protect her spirit, to stand firm in her self-belief and to focus on the people and opportunities that truly mattered. It was a slow process, but each interaction strengthened her resolve. One afternoon, she found herself mentoring a younger student who was struggling with the same challenges she once faced. The child was shy, uncertain, and afraid of being mocked. She remembered her own feelings, her own loneliness, and she guided the child gently, offering encouragement and practical advice. In that moment, she realized that her experiences had not been wasted. Her struggles had given her empathy, resilience, and the ability to inspire others. She began to see her journey not just as personal growth, but as a way to uplift those around her. As her confidence grew, so did her ambition. She began setting goals for herself that once seemed impossible. She envisioned larger performances, more complex projects, and greater recognition for her work. She understood that the road ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that she had the strength, discipline, and determination to pursue her dreams. The spark that had started in her small room had grown into a steady flame, illuminating the path forward. Even in moments of doubt, she reminded herself of how far she had come. She thought about the nights spent creating alone, the fear she had overcome, and the small victories that had built her confidence. She realized that every insult, every act of mockery had taught her resilience. Every moment of loneliness had taught her self-reliance. Every tiny step forward had laid the foundation for something extraordinary. She began to embrace her journey fully, understanding that each part of it was shaping her into the person she was meant to become. By the end of the year, she had transformed from the quiet, overlooked girl into someone who carried herself with quiet confidence. She still had moments of insecurity, still faced challenges, but she had developed the tools to navigate them. She had discovered the power of perseverance, the joy of creative expression, and the importance of self-belief. And most importantly, she had learned that her value was not determined by those who mocked her, but by the strength, talent, and passion that resided within her. As she looked ahead, she felt a sense of anticipation and hope. She knew that the journey was far from over, that there would be more obstacles and more moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had the courage and resilience to face them. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her passion, and nothing could take that away. And though she did not yet know it, the first true steps toward the miracle of her story had been taken, a journey that would soon inspire not only those around her but the world beyond. A few months after her first showcase, an unexpected opportunity appeared. The school announced a larger competition, one that included students from nearby schools. The announcement sparked excitement among her peers, and many rushed to sign up, boasting about their talents. She felt the familiar mixture of fear and anticipation. Her mind raced with doubts. What if she failed? What if the mockery returned? What if she wasn't good enough? But she also felt a quiet determination. This was her chance to push herself further, to step out of the shadows and show the world what she could do. In the weeks leading up to the competition, she dedicated herself fully. Every afternoon, she stayed after school, refining her skills, practicing relentlessly. Her hands grew steadier, her voice stronger, her ideas sharper. She faced setbacks, moments when nothing seemed right. But she had learned from experience to view these as stepping stones rather than roadblocks. Her parents watched silently, providing support in small ways, giving her encouragement without pressure. Even her siblings began to show curiosity, offering small compliments and asking questions about her work. The atmosphere at home had shifted. Her dedication was becoming a shared experience, not just a solitary pursuit. She also faced moments of confrontation with those who had mocked her. Some classmates tried to belittle her efforts, whispering behind her back or making sarcastic comments. But instead of shrinking away, she learned to hold her ground. She didn't respond with anger or humiliation. She responded with quiet focus, letting her work speak for itself. Every taunt became fuel for her determination. She realized that the people who had once made her feel small were no longer controlling her emotions. She was learning to rise above negativity, to protect her spirit, and to focus on her growth. As the competition approached, she began imagining herself performing in front of a larger audience. The thought was terrifying yet thrilling. She pictured the stage, the lights, the crowd watching her every move. The memories of past humiliation lingered, but they were now tempered by confidence and preparation. She knew she was ready to take this step, and she also knew that fear was a natural companion on the path to success. The day of the competition arrived, and the auditorium buzzed with energy. Students from various schools displayed their talents, each one eager to impress. Backstage, she waited quietly, taking deep breaths, reminding herself of the hours she had spent preparing. Her nerves were high, but so was her excitement. When her turn arrived, she walked onto the stage with a mixture of anxiety and determination. The lights shone down, the audience fell silent, and for a moment time seemed to stand still. Her performance began tentatively, but as she continued, she felt a flow of energy. The skills she had honed over countless hours of practice came naturally. She moved with confidence, spoke with clarity, and expressed herself fully. The audience leaned in, captivated by the authenticity and passion she displayed. She could see the surprise on the faces of some students who had once mocked her, their disbelief clear as they realized the depth of her talent. For the first time, she felt the true power of her hard work, the impact of her dedication, and the realization that she had earned this moment through her own effort. When the performance ended, the applause was immediate and overwhelming. People stood and clapped, cheering for her with genuine appreciation. She felt a mix of relief, pride, and joy. The recognition was not just external, it was internal. She knew that she had faced her fears, overcome her doubts, and showcased the best version of herself. The validation from others was meaningful, but what mattered more was the confidence she had gained, and the realization that her efforts had been worthwhile. After the competition, the results were announced. She had won first place. The judges praised her skill, creativity, and dedication, highlighting the uniqueness of her work. The excitement and pride she felt were immense. She had faced a larger audience, a more challenging environment, and emerged victorious. The people who had once doubted her now watched in awe, some with admiration, some with disbelief. For the first time, she experienced the power of her own transformation, the tangible results of years of effort and resilience. This victory brought new opportunities. Invitations to participate in regional events, workshops, and exhibitions began to arrive. Her name started circulating, first in her school, then in local communities. Teachers and mentors encouraged her to pursue her talent further, to explore paths that she had only dreamed of before. The recognition gave her confidence to take bigger steps, to push her limits even more. She began to see that her passion could open doors she had never imagined. At home, the atmosphere shifted further. Her parents expressed pride openly, sharing her achievements with neighbors and friends. Her siblings were genuinely excited, often asking her to teach them or join her in creative projects. The family began to celebrate her successes together, and the sense of support and unity grew stronger. The girl who had once been isolated and mocked was now seen as someone special, someone capable of inspiring others. Yet she remained grounded. She knew that success could be fleeting if not nurtured, and she continued to dedicate herself to her craft. She spent hours refining techniques, exploring new ideas, and learning from others. Each achievement was a step forward, but she never lost sight of the effort required to maintain and grow her skills. She understood that talent alone was not enough. Perseverance, discipline, and continuous learning were essential components of lasting success. Alongside her personal growth, she became a source of inspiration for others. Younger students who had once been intimidated or shy began to approach her for guidance and encouragement. She shared her experiences, her struggles, and her strategies for overcoming obstacles. Her story resonated deeply, showing that dedication, patience, and belief in oneself could transform even the most difficult circumstances. She realized that her journey was not only about personal achievement, but also about helping others discover their own potential. The people who had once mocked her began to treat her differently. Some approached her with newfound respect, acknowledging her talent and dedication. Others tried to reconcile or understand her journey. The change in their behavior was noticeable, and it reinforced the idea that resilience and determination could shift perceptions. She did not seek revenge or validation through others. Rather, she focused on the fulfillment that came from knowing her own worth and seeing the impact of her efforts. Through this period, she also learned to handle criticism constructively. Not all feedback was positive, and she encountered moments where her work was questioned or challenged. Instead of letting criticism discourage her, she analyzed it carefully, learned from it, and applied it to improve her skills. This approach strengthened her resilience, refined her abilities, and deepened her understanding of her craft. She recognized that growth often came from challenges, and that the ability to learn from both praise and critique was invaluable. Her growing recognition also led to opportunities to collaborate with others. She worked with peers who shared her interests, exchanging ideas and learning new techniques. The collaboration expanded her perspective, pushed her creativity further, and reinforced the importance of community and personal development. She discovered that talent could be enhanced through shared experiences, and that learning from others did not diminish her uniqueness, but strengthened it. By the end of this stage, she had transformed significantly. The quiet, overlooked girl was no longer invisible. She had found her voice, her talent, and her confidence. Her achievements were not just external markers of success. They were reflections of her growth, resilience, and dedication. She had learned to rise above mockery, overcome fear, and embrace her abilities fully. Each step she took was a testament to the power of persistence and the rewards of staying true to oneself. Looking forward, she understood that the journey was ongoing. There would be bigger challenges, more demanding opportunities, and moments of doubt. But she now possessed the tools, mindset, and courage to navigate them. She had experienced the transformative power of perseverance, the impact of sharing her passion, and the joy of achieving goals she once thought unattainable. The path ahead was bright, and she was ready to walk it with confidence, knowing that the efforts she had invested were laying the foundation for even greater accomplishments. The story of her first true breakthrough was a turning point. It marked the moment when her private dedication became visible, when her skills were recognized, and when the world began to see her potential. The journey from being mocked to being celebrated was underway, and she was at the center of it, empowered by her talent, strengthened by her struggles, and inspired by the possibilities ahead. She had begun to rewrite the narrative of her life, turning pain into purpose, doubt into determination, and mockery into motivation. The first miracle was unfolding, and it was only the beginning. After her first major success, her life began to change in ways she had never imagined. Invitations to events, workshops, and competitions started arriving steadily. People from outside her school and neighborhood were noticing her talent. Every new opportunity brought excitement and nervousness. She still remembered the fear of being mocked, the long nights of practice, and the feeling of being invisible. But now there was a new feeling, hope. The small girl who once felt overlooked was gradually stepping into a wider world, and she was determined to make the most of it. The first few times she participated in external events, she was nervous. Traveling to new places, performing in front of unknown audiences, and competing with talented peers was intimidating. Yet each time she reminded herself of the hours she had spent honing her skills, the lessons she had learned from failures, and the quiet strength that had grown inside her. She took a deep breath before stepping forward and focused only on her work, letting her talent and preparation speak for her. Slowly, she realized that the world outside her neighborhood was not as frightening as she had imagined. She could face it with courage, and her efforts could shine beyond familiar walls. As she gained recognition, some of the same people who had mocked her began to change their behavior. They approached her differently, some with curiosity, others with admiration, and a few with guilt for having been unkind. She didn't let this shift affect her too deeply. She remained grounded, understanding that their recognition was a byproduct of her success, not the goal itself. She focused on her own growth and the joy she found in her craft. Yet the subtle acknowledgement from her former critics gave her a sense of vindication, not in revenge, but in proof that perseverance and dedication could truly change perceptions. Her family continued to be her backbone. They accompanied her to events, celebrated her victories, and offered comfort after setbacks. Their support reminded her that her journey was not solitary. She was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her growth. Her siblings, once indifferent, now looked up to her. They asked questions, tried to learn from her, and sometimes joined her in small projects. Her parents quietly expressed pride, not through grand gestures but in the consistent encouragement and trust they gave her. It became clear that her family's belief in her had been a crucial factor in her resilience. Even as recognition grew, she remained humble. She understood that every achievement was built on countless hours of effort, moments of doubt, and failures she had faced alone. She continued to practice relentlessly, experiment with new ideas, and push her limits. She knew that talent alone was not enough. Discipline, focus, and the willingness to learn from mistakes were equally important. She embraced the process of growth as much as the outcomes, knowing that each step, whether small or large, was shaping her into the person she wanted to become. Her influence began to spread beyond her immediate environment. Younger students who had once seen her as quiet and overlooked started seeking her guidance. She shared her experiences, her strategies for overcoming fear, and the importance of persistence. She became a role model not through words alone but through actions, through the consistent demonstration of dedication, humility, and resilience. Seeing others grow because of her guidance gave her a deep sense of satisfaction, reinforcing the idea that success was most meaningful when it could inspire others. As she gained experience, she also learned to navigate challenges with more wisdom. Not all feedback was positive, and not every event went smoothly. She faced moments of criticism, technical difficulties, and unexpected obstacles. However, instead of being discouraged, she analyzed each situation, learned from it, and adjusted her approach. She realized that setbacks were not signs of failure, but opportunities to improve. This mindset allowed her to approach each new challenge with confidence, knowing that even if the outcome was uncertain, her effort and learning were never wasted. Her reputation grew steadily, and soon media outlets began to notice her talent. Interviews, features, and articles highlighted her journey from a quiet, overlooked girl to a rising star in her field. The attention was both exciting and overwhelming. She had to learn how to handle recognition without losing focus, to balance external praise with internal growth. Her parents guided her through these experiences, reminding her to stay grounded and prioritize her development over popularity. She learned that true achievement was measured by personal growth, not by the number of people who applauded her. Despite all the success, she remained empathetic to those who struggled as she once had. She reached out to children who faced ridicule or felt invisible, offering encouragement and practical advice. She understood how painful it could be to be underestimated or mocked, and she wanted to help others find their own confidence and voice. Her experiences had taught her that resilience could be cultivated, and she became a living example of how dedication and self-belief could transform lives. Helping others became a source of joy and purpose, adding depth to her growing achievements. As her skills and recognition expanded, she started to set more ambitious goals. She aimed for higher-level competitions, collaborations with experts, and opportunities to showcase her work on larger platforms. Each goal required meticulous planning, dedication, and perseverance. She learned to break large tasks into smaller, manageable steps, maintaining focus and avoiding overwhelm. Her journey became a balance of ambition and patience, each new challenge building on the foundation of her previous successes. Her growth also had a subtle impact on her community. People began to see her not just as a talented individual, but as someone who could inspire change and motivate others. Neighbors who once ignored her now watched with interest, curious about her progress. Teachers and mentors started referring to her as a model student, not because of natural talent alone, but because of her work ethic, humility, and resilience. She realized that true influence came from consistent effort, integrity, and the ability to remain true to oneself despite external pressures. Alongside external achievements, her internal growth continued. She developed emotional resilience, learning to navigate fear, disappointment, and criticism without losing confidence. She became more self-aware, understanding her strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. She cultivated patience, recognizing that success was not instant and that lasting achievement required time, effort, and persistence. Most importantly, she learned to celebrate progress, however small, and to appreciate the journey as much as the destination. Evenings at home remained sacred. She continued to explore her passion, experiment with new techniques, and refine her skills. These quiet moments allowed her to reflect, recharge, and plan for the next challenge. She found that consistency and discipline in her personal practice were just as important as public recognition. The work she did in solitude strengthened her confidence and creativity, forming the backbone of her growing success. Her relationship with peers evolved as well. Some of the students who had once mocked her began to show respect, even seeking her advice or collaboration. Others maintained distance, perhaps out of envy or discomfort with her rising status. She learned to navigate these dynamics with grace, focusing on her work and the people who genuinely supported her. Her energy was no longer wasted on negative attention, She channeled it into growth, creativity, and meaningful connections. As months passed, she began to see the full impact of her journey. She had transformed from a quiet, overlooked girl into someone whose talent, dedication, and resilience inspired others. She had experienced setbacks, fear, and doubt, yet she had overcome them through perseverance and self-belief. She understood that the journey was ongoing, that each success opened the door to new challenges, but she was prepared to face them. She had discovered her voice, her purpose, and her ability to make a positive impact on the world. By the end of this stage, her story had reached a turning point. She was no longer just a student with talent. She was a symbol of resilience and possibility. The people who had once mocked her now observed her with admiration and respect, some openly, some silently. She didn't seek their approval, but she understood that her achievements had changed perceptions. The quiet girl who had once been overlooked had become a source of inspiration, demonstrating that with patience, dedication, and self-belief, it was possible to transform one's life and influence others positively. She looked ahead with excitement and determination. The opportunities were growing, the challenges were increasing, and the path was becoming more demanding. Yet she felt ready. She had cultivated the skills, mindset, and resilience necessary to navigate the journey. She knew that the best was yet to come, and she embraced the future with confidence, hope, and unwavering commitment. Her story, which had begun in quiet struggle and ridicule, was blossoming into a remarkable journey of achievement, recognition, and inspiration. She had become a living example that miracles could happen when perseverance met talent, and that even those who were once underestimated could rise to greatness. Years of dedication, practice, and perseverance had finally brought her to a defining moment. She had grown from the quiet, overlooked girl who once trembled under mockery into someone recognized and respected far beyond her neighborhood. Invitations to national competitions, workshops, and exhibitions poured in. Her talent had evolved into mastery, her confidence unshakable, and her presence on stage or in front of an audience commanding. Yet she remained humble, understanding that every step of her journey had been built on consistent effort and the lessons learned from setbacks. The culmination of her hard work came in the form of a prestigious event that would test everything she had learned. The stage was grand, the audience massive, and the judges renowned experts in their fields. She felt a familiar nervous flutter, but it was tempered by the strength she had cultivated over the years. Every challenge, every mocking word, every lonely night of practice had prepared her for this moment. She reminded herself that this was not just about winning. It was about showing the world the result of years of dedication, resilience, and belief in herself. As she stepped onto the stage, the lights illuminated her, and the murmurs of the crowd faded into silence. For a brief moment, all the doubts and fears she had carried since childhood resurfaced. But she anchored herself in the knowledge of her preparation. She let her skills take over, moving with grace, expressing herself fully and pouring her heart into her work. Each gesture, note, or stroke of creativity was a testament to her journey. The audience was captivated, and even the judges leaned forward, clearly impressed by her mastery and authenticity. By the time she concluded, there was a moment of silence followed by an eruption of applause that echoed through the hall. People rose to their feet, cheering not only for the talent they had witnessed but also for the story it represented. She had transcended the small limitations of her past, and the impact was palpable. The same individuals who had once doubted or mocked her now watched in awe, recognizing the extraordinary growth and resilience that had brought her to this point. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and deep joy. It was a validation not just of her skill, but of her unwavering commitment and belief in herself. When the awards were announced, she received the highest honor. Her name was called, and as she walked to the stage to accept the recognition, the applause intensified. Cameras flashed and people cheered, celebrating the journey of someone who had started with so little recognition and so much doubt. Her parents were in the crowd, tears in their eyes, proud of the transformation they had witnessed. Her siblings clapped enthusiastically, inspired by her dedication and perseverance. It was a moment that encapsulated years of struggle, growth, and triumph. As the event concluded, she was approached by people who had once mocked her. Their words were a mixture of admiration and astonishment. Some apologized, some expressed regret for underestimating her, and others simply acknowledged her as someone remarkable. She received their words with grace, understanding that her journey had changed perceptions not through anger or revenge, but through consistent effort and achievement. She realized that the transformation of others' views was a byproduct of her own growth, and it was not something she had to pursue actively. The recognition opened doors she had never imagined. Opportunities for collaborations, mentorships, and public engagements began to multiply. She became a source of inspiration for young people facing challenges similar to those she had experienced. Her story was shared in articles, interviews, and social media, emphasizing the power of perseverance, dedication, and self-belief. She used her platform not for personal gain alone, but to encourage and uplift others, demonstrating that even those who are underestimated can achieve extraordinary things when they commit fully to their passion. Her daily routine continued to reflect the discipline and dedication that had brought her this far. She spent hours refining her skills, experimenting with new ideas, and mentoring younger talents. The quiet moments of practice remained sacred, a space where she could focus, reflect, and grow. She understood that success was not a destination but a continuous journey, and she embraced every challenge and opportunity with the same diligence that had fueled her from the beginning. Through it all, she never lost sight of her roots. She remembered the struggles, the mockery, and the loneliness that had once defined her days. Those experiences became a source of empathy and motivation. She often returned to her old neighborhood to conduct workshops, inspire students, and share her journey. She wanted to show that resilience, hard work, and belief in oneself could transform lives. The joy she saw in the faces of young students realizing their own potential reinforced the significance of her journey. Her family remained her constant support system. They celebrated every achievement, offered comfort during setbacks, and provided a sense of stability in a world that had suddenly become larger and more complex. Their quiet encouragement had always been the anchor that allowed her to explore her potential fully. She was grateful for their unwavering belief in her, understanding that her success was intertwined with the love and support she had received throughout her life. As her influence grew, she faced new challenges. Managing public attention, balancing personal growth with external expectations, and maintaining authenticity became essential skills. She navigated these challenges with the same resilience and focus that had defined her early journey. She learned to prioritize her goals, stay true to her values, and continue cultivating her talent without being swayed by pressure or distraction. Each day was a balance of growth, reflection, and contribution to others. Her achievements became a testament to the power of perseverance. She had transformed from a girl who was mocked and overlooked into someone who inspired admiration and respect. The miracle was not just in her talent but in her journey. The countless hours of practice, the resilience in the face of ridicule, and the unwavering belief that she could overcome obstacles. Her story showed that even those who start with the least recognition can achieve the most extraordinary outcomes when they commit fully to their dreams. The community that once ignored or ridiculed her began to see her in a new light. Neighbors, teachers, and peers who had underestimated her now spoke of her achievements with pride and amazement. She had become a symbol of transformation, showing that courage, dedication, and self-belief could turn adversity into opportunity. Her journey inspired not only admiration but also reflection, encouraging others to reconsider their judgments and to recognize the potential in themselves and others. Despite the accolades and recognition, she remained grounded. She continued to approach her craft with humility, seeing every achievement as a step in an ongoing journey rather than a final destination. She valued learning, growth, and contribution over fame or approval. Her success was measured not only by external acknowledgement, but also by the impact she had on others, and the fulfillment she felt in pursuing her passion wholeheartedly. In quiet moments, she reflected on how far she had come. The girl who once walked the streets with her head down, fearing ridicule and mockery, had grown into someone confident, capable, and inspiring. She understood the significance of every struggle, every setback, and every act of perseverance. Her journey had transformed not only her life, but also the lives of those she touched through her example, mentorship, and presence. The story of her life reached its full circle in the recognition she received from those who had once doubted her. The same people who had laughed at her now called her a miracle, astonished by her transformation and achievements. It was a miracle not because it was effortless, but because it was the result of unwavering determination, resilience, and dedication. She had rewritten the narrative of her life, turning mockery into motivation, fear into courage, and isolation into influence. As she looked to the future, she knew the journey would continue. New challenges, opportunities, and experiences awaited, yet she faced them with confidence, knowing that her foundation was strong, her skills refined, and her spirit resilient. She embraced the unknown with hope, excitement, and the assurance that her journey of growth, inspiration, and contribution was far from over. Her story became a beacon for those who felt overlooked, mocked, or underestimated. It showed that miracles could happen when passion, dedication, and self-belief intersected with perseverance. The journey from being mocked to being celebrated was not just about personal achievement, but about inspiring others to believe in themselves and the possibilities they could create. Her life exemplified the truth that no obstacle was insurmountable when faced with courage, patience, and unwavering commitment to one's dreams. In the end, the miracle was complete. The quiet girl who once faced ridicule and doubt had emerged as a symbol of hope, resilience, and inspiration. She had transformed her life and influenced countless others, showing that the power to overcome adversity and achieve greatness lies within each individual. The story that began with struggle and mockery had blossomed into a testament to human potential, proving that with dedication, perseverance, and belief in oneself, even the most challenging paths can lead to extraordinary outcomes.